We're going to look at the occupational exposure that we all have. And some essential facts on this mercury exposure is that it's a neurotoxin, and any exposure is dangerous. You want to have zero exposure if that's at all possible. The toxic effects of mercury exposure vary by the individual, as the genetics showed. One or a combination of symptoms can be present and can change over time. It affects people in different ways. Coexisting factors influence this personalized reaction, and it can take many years for symptoms to manifest themselves. Our immune systems are amazing. They can get rid of a lot of toxins. They can prevent a lot of disease. But this chronic exposure, and as we age and as our immune system gets not as efficient, you can start having these diseases show up. And it's a lot of these diseases that there's really no known cause for in the basic medical research or papers. They just don't know what causes them. But they're not looking in the right places. It's accumulation of toxins in our body, the breakdown of our immune system that causes disease. So what's happening with dentistry these days is we're hearing some different words being thrown around. Biological has been a word that's been kind of hot. Mercury-free, which basically means you do not place mercury amalgam fillings. But a lot of the really young dentists, and I see some young dentists out there, you've probably come out of school and you've made a decision not to place amalgam fillings. So you're being mercury-free. But I'm going to show you how to be mercury-safe today. So mercury-safe means we're going to use rigorous safety measures to mitigate mercury exposure. And I'm going to go over a SMART protocol, an acronym that we've introduced. Most of my presentation will be based on the SMART protocol. You can be biological or biocompatible, mercury-free, mercury-safe, and consider the impact of dental materials and treatments on oral and systemic health. You can combine it all, which is hopefully what you'll do. So how many dentists you think these days practice mercury-free? Really practice mercury-free? I say there's no such thing. Because our patients have tons, literally, of mercury in their mouths. And as biological dentists, if we're helping them get it out, we're exposing them and ourselves and our team every time we take one of these out, if we're not taking universal precautions for mercury. So we've got two forms of mercury exposure we need to worry about in the dental office. And the IAOMT has always realized that mercury vapor was a problem. So we developed techniques to protect us from mercury vapor. So we know that when we remove this stuff, it's hazardous. It creates more of this vapor. And that we absorb, 80% of it is absorbed into the lungs. And it's absorbed rapidly in those lungs, into the lungs. Within approximately 10 minutes of absorption, about 30% of the mercury in the lungs is transferred to the blood. Inhalation of large amounts can actually damage the lower parts of the bronchi tree and lung tissue, and this would be in a very big acute exposure for that to show up that quick. So this is some research, and I might have to put my glasses on, but I think I know what it says. It's hell getting old. So, so this is some research that was out of Monastery City, neuropsychological effects of mercury exposure among dentists. And this was in 2015. They wanted to assess the neuropsychological manifestations of mercury exposure in dentists. And they used 64 dentists, and their results were that in the exposed group, which were all 64 dentists, scores of neurological symptoms, memory disturbances, and anxiety were significantly higher than the controls. They had depression mean scores were higher in the exposed group than in controls, and most of the neurotoxic manifestations were correlated to the levels of urinary mercury excretion in the exposed group. So they concluded that increased levels of urinary mercury observed in dentists suggest that prevention should be strengthened with a special medical supervision program of dentists exposed to mercury vapors. And that was done in Tunisia, if y'all don't know where. I didn't know where Monastir City was, at their university hospital. And then in the Journal of Scientific Environmental Epidemiology, and you'll notice these aren't dental journals. They're not going to be published in dental journals. They'll reject them. These are toxicology type journals. So they looked at exposures of dental professionals to elemental mercury and to methyl mercury. So they recruited 630 dental professionals from an American Dental Association meeting to assess mercury body burden and primary sources of exposure in a dually exposed population. Now the ADA also used this data to paint a different story. It's the same data, and I'll give you a little, there'll be another study based on this same database. They described their occupational practice in fish consumptions, mercury levels and biomarkers of elemental mercury, which comes from the amalgam, and methyl mercury, which would be from the fish, was measured with direct mercury analyzers, and they found that the dentists on both levels were higher than the general U.S. population. And they gave some values there. In multiple variable linear regression, personal amalgams predicted urine mercury levels along with total years in dentistry. Amalgams handled working hours and sex. Actually, men usually retain more mercury than women in most studies. So that would be the sex thing. How long they worked, their long-term chronic exposure showed they had more mercury in their bodies. It actually came from ADA data. All right, what's going on here? So in 1975 through 1983, the ADA conducted DMSA challenge tests on 4,272 U.S. dentists. Now, a challenge test is you take a chelating agent and you measure how much mercury comes out in the urine. So if you're pulling out a lot of urine mercury levels, you theoretically have a lot of mercury in your body to pull out. So they're forcing it out of the body. And they found a mean urine level of 4.2 micrograms of mercury per liter. Now, when you do that test, if you're going through chelation, you start off with high levels, you want to get that down to below 3. And then you think you've done a pretty good job of cleaning yourself up. So 19% were over 20 micrograms of mercury. 11% were over the CDC maximum acceptable level of 30. 4.9% were over 50, and that's a level that is known to cause induced tremors. And 1.3% were over 100, and that definitely would be people who are having tremors in that dental population.
In 1991, the World Health Organization acknowledged that the predominant source of human exposure to mercury is from your fillings. That should be of concern to anyone. So all mercury-silver fillings leak substantial amounts of mercury constantly. The amount increases with any kind of stimulation, and as a result, mercury from fillings produces the majority of human exposure to mercury. The International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology is extremely concerned about the anecdotal claims of safety by manufacturers and dental trade associations. They're at variance with the published, peer-reviewed scientific evidence to the contrary. The precautionary principle requires action once the possibility of harm exists. It does not require proof beyond a shadow of a doubt that in the case of heavy metal and xenobiotic exposure is both nearly impossible and unnecessary, in our opinion. What you're seeing is mercury vapor coming off a 25-year-old silver amalgam filling in an extracted tooth. The background is a phosphorescent screen. The mercury vapor absorbs the fluorescent light, and you can see it as a shadow on the screen. This is mercury coming off a filling that was dipped in water that's the same temperature as the human body. This is a filling that was rubbed with a pencil eraser for just a few seconds. Like going to the hygienist and having her clean your teeth. These are not small amounts of mercury. If you can see it, It's more than 1,000 times higher than the Environmental Protection Agency will allow for the air that we breathe. What about the last time you went to the dentist and they drilled on your teeth? Here is the mercury vapor every time you raise the temperature to 110 degrees with hot coffee or warm water, or even chewed on it. Mercury comes off fillings every time you stimulate them, and that stimulation causes the mercury to continue to leak out of the fillings for an hour and a half at a minimum. Some people grind their teeth. Some people chew gum. The dentist might send an old gold crown to the dental lab to be welded. How about the dental personnel? They're not being given informed consent. Back in 1985, the International Academy of Oral Medicine Toxicology set out to determine the amount of mercury that was coming off fillings. And here's the graph, showing substantial quantities of mercury were measured coming off fillings. And then we estimated the total dose. And then we began animal experiments and put radioactive fillings in sheep. Mercury accumulated in the jaw, stomach, liver, and kidney of the sheep in just 30 days. Substantial quantities of mercury spread from the fillings to every organ in that sheep's body. Then we measured that the sheep's kidneys dropped in their ability by 60% to clear inulin, an indication of kidney malfunction. Whole body imaging of monkeys found exactly the same thing. Proponents of amalgam fillings claim that sheep chew too much. Well, what's the problem with monkeys? They had mercury in their jaw, kidneys, liver, intestine, and heart. And further research found dystrophic bacteria that were antibiotic resistant cropped up in the intestines within 2 weeks of receiving these mercury-leaking fillings. Further studies have found damage to the ADP ribosylation of brain neuron proteins. In response to the controversy, and at the request of the Federation of Experimental Scientists and Biologists, Drs. Fritzloh Scheider and Murray Vimy wrote an editorial, the first ever in FASEB, that point by point refuted the claims of the amalgam proponents. That should be of concern to anyone wanting to have healthy children, because mercury is highly damaging to fetuses. Experiments in sheep showed that mercury from the sheep's fillings transferred immediately to the placenta, to the unborn fetus, and to every conceivable portion of the fetus's body. It even increased in the lamb higher after birth from mercury in the mother's milk. There's no such thing as a safe mercury filling. All mercury fillings leak mercury. The combined effect of mercury, cadmium, and lead is just now being investigated, but it's not 1 in 1. It's synergistic, and 1 in 1 may make 100 or even 1,000. Why is that of concern? Over and over again, we've heard that children are exposed to lead from our environment. Mercury in lead is many times more toxic than just mercury alone. These black, corroded, pitted mercury fillings are used where you must drill away 1/3 of the tooth in order to fix a pinhead-sized cavity. Even if you love mercury, it's the wrong thing to do to the children. It leads to broken, diseased, root canal, extracted teeth throughout the rest of the life. It's a blunder that costs the child all through their life. Millions and millions of dollars are spent annually fixing teeth again and again. And dentists don't follow the manufacturer's recommendations. They pack mercury in children around gold crowns, underneath bridges. They stuff it around the gum line in contact with tissues. There's mercury spreading from this gold crown to every tissue in that patient's body. Even if you like mercury fillings, putting that kind of filling in the tooth is simply the wrong thing to do. Harold Lowe, the former director of the National Institute of Dental Research, back in 1993, wrote, "The first filling is a critical step in the life of the tooth. Using amalgam for the first filling requires removing a lot of tooth substance, not only diseased tooth substance, but healthy tooth substance as well. So in making the undercuts, you sacrifice a lot, and this results in a weakened tooth. The next thing you know, the tooth breaks off, and you need a crown. Then you need to repair the crown. And so it continues to the stage where there's no more to repair, and you pull the tooth. With the first filling, you should do something that can either restore the tooth or retain more healthy tooth substance. Use new materials, composites, or materials that can bond to the surface without undercuts. You can do this with little removal of the tooth substance so that the core of the tooth is still there. I would add that the cost of all that dental repair over and over again makes the cost of mercury fillings enormous, even if you don't consider the neurological impairment and the brain damage that they surely cause in dental personnel, and the infertility and the heartbreak that they've caused to so many families. It is the opinion of this Academy that responsible government agencies should prohibit the use of these fillings until such time as their manufacturers produce the alleged evidence of safety. These instructions can be found on the webpage of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. I would recommend that you review them and have your dentist do the same before commencing any procedures involving mercury.
All right, now, I know a lot of that was redundant. It showed the sheep studies again, the monkey studies, the amount that is emitted of vapor after chewing for an hour and a half is still emitted. I really think it's important for everybody to understand that these are sources of exposure to your patients and to yourselves. So I felt like we should just go over that again and show it in a little more detail. Now, you're also exposed to particulates a problem. But these really aren't separate issues, okay? We just usually used to focus on vapor, but then we realized we also have particulate that's a problem. Because when we are drilling these things out, you're creating this aerosol of a mixture of vapor and particulate. And it goes everywhere. And we've got some studies that show exactly where it goes and how much can be deposited at one taking out a couple fillings. If you're not protected, or you wearing your scrubs all day for the same patient, and then you go to the same clothes for the next patient, the same clothes for the next patient, you're just accumulating all day long. You're getting particulate on your skin, you're getting particulate on your clothes. So why is that a problem? Well, the particulate's off-gassing the vapor. We can get the vapor out of the room fast. All right, so here's a little video.
I researched all the literature on the occupational exposure of dentists to amalgam.
I took his
and ended up writing a paper as a result of that research that was published on exposure predominantly to particulate matter. As dentists drill out a filling, their dental drill runs at about 400,000 RPM, and it sends a shower of micron size and
Have y'all seen this one? It was in Bill's, right? Because I thought I took this one out. I'm not going to show this one, because everybody's seen this, right? Okay. All right. It must have not deleted. So, we have studies by Mark Richardson that have shown inhalation of mercury-contaminated participant matter by dentists has overlooked occupational risks, and he says in that article that it is apparent that the single largest sources of mercury exposure to the practicing dentist is removal of old amalgam fillings. The dose of mercury contained in the amalgam particulate inhaled with the removal of just a single small filling far exceeds that associated with the inhalation of mercury vapor contained within the general dental operatory air over the course of an entire week. Because we can easily dissipate the vapor with engineering controls. But the particulate that lands on surfaces, that lands on your clothes, stays with you and off-gasses the whole time. And if you breathe it in, it lodges in your lungs and it stays there. So the risk of the patient and the dental personnel during amalgam removal is primarily due to that aerosol that's created that contains vapor and particulate. And our real everyday risk exceeds the 100 micrograms per meter cubed of air that OSHA sets, or 4.8 that the EPA sets. They're all dangerous levels. And this is right where we are breathing as we're working on that patient, where we can measure this. So we're going to teach you how to minimize your risk. Now, you've been exposed to the hazards of mercury, some of us, since the first maybe filling was put in your mouth, or maybe your mother had fillings and you were exposed as an infant. On the first day you stepped in the teaching lab in dental school or into the building, you were exposed because they are highly contaminated. And previous studies have established that dentists and their team members are exposed to mercury vapor and mercury particulate. This was a 1989 study. And the significance of these studies, you know, those were 1990, these are 1989. This is not something that's new. This is published studies that the ADA could read. And they're not done at crazy places. This was, again, in an environmental health journal, percutaneous absorption of mercury vapor by man. And Nemo, Worley, Martin, and Tanzi in 1990 also showed dentists inhaled particulate material during the removal of mercury silver fillings. So in the Nemo article, which is a very significant article because it was published where dentists could read it, in a journal of prosthetic dentistry. He said the use of water spray, high velocity evacuation, and a rubber dam almost completely eliminated particulate inhalation by the patient. The simulation of the dentist was exposed to moderate amounts of fully respirable particles for all conditions tested. So the way we were taught in dental school, high volume and water, the dentist and team member are still respiring particles of mercury. And this was a study done by Cutright, and this was done on rats. They looked at the systemic mercury levels caused by inhaling mist during the high-speed amalgam grounding. So they took some amalgam, ground it out in the presence of rats, and let them breathe the dust and vapor. And they found that it was immediately absorbed into the bloodstream, that the heart received extremely high levels of mercury within minutes, 81 times more than the control. That the brain and liver reached their highest levels within 16 hours. That was 7 times more than the control. And the kidney levels will rise slowly and remained high at 72 hours. So myself and Dr. Young and Dr. Virtue and Dr. Warwick back there, we decided that we wanted to look at where all this particulate was going. And part of this was part of my problem, because I practiced amalgam dentistry for 14 years like they told me to in dental school, and I got very sick from it. So I'd been treated for mercury poisoning, had to go through chelation, got my levels down, finally quit being a dummy and joined the IAOMT, and they taught me how to use some precautionary measures. So I was using a mask and protecting my patients and using a respirator mask. But my levels went up again. So I kind of questioned whether we were doing enough, and in a discussion around a bar, of course, we decided let's look at particulate. And so Matt and Dave designed the study, and we did it in one of my old offices that I was getting ready to move out of because I knew we were going to contaminate the thing like crazy. And we took all our controls on, which I'll be going over with you, and started with those, and then removed a control each time till we actually got down to no controls at all. And we took out like 8 restorations. We were using a mannequin for each session we ran. But basically, just to kind of summarize, with all our controls on, which was what I'll be teaching you in a little bit, how to safely do it, we saw there was still exposure. We saw that the particulate and vapor, which is we measured here, and we were breathing this measurement, we got as much as 3.3 micrograms. And just the vapor itself, we had some peaks with all our controls on of 1.3 micrograms. But the total vapor that was created as we took that out was well over 160 micrograms. Lots of mercury. You can't just look at peaks like they like to do, because you're sitting there the whole time breathing all the mercury vapor you created. And then the assistant on her knee was getting 2.9 micrograms, and these were surface samples. So this is where the particulate was falling. We measured, and it was just remember, we didn't measure every inch of the office because we couldn't afford to. We were measuring little patches in different places, and we measured the same place for each session. But we found that the patient's chest got 340 micrograms. That's a lot of mercury to take home. Take that home and go pick your kid up at daycare and cuddle that kid to your chest, and it's full of mercury vapor. Not a good thing to do. So then we looked at all of them. I'm just presenting some of the data. But we looked at just water and dental suction, the way we were taught to do it in dental school. And again, we saw that particulate vapor increased up to 5.3. The peak vapor went up to 21.4. Look at the average of the total vapor, the combination of the total vapor we created, and we did that. Almost 3,000 micrograms of mercury vapor during that procedure, actually taking out 4 amalgams at a time. And then the assistant's knee got up to 360 micrograms. That's just one patient. So how many patients are you going to do that for a day? Then you're going to add some more to her knee and to her chest and to all her clothes, because we only measured her knee, which was closest to the head. And then the patient's chest went up to 1,900 micrograms at the patient's chest. So we realized particulate's a problem. We need to be more conscious and find a way to protect from where this stuff's settling in the room. So with all those controls in place, we were exposed. The assistant and the patients have exposures of high levels. And we know that it can be inhaled, and we know it can be absorbed through the skin. From the percutaneous absorption of mercury vapor by man that Clarkson did. And then from Nemo's studies, we know we're being exposed. And then Robin Warwick, this is David's daughter. She's a recent graduate from dental school, a couple years now. She actually got the dental school to let her measure mercury levels, vapor levels, in their dental labs while they were training to remove amalgam in their dental labs. And believe it or not, she got this published in the Journal of Occupational Medicine and Toxicology. So she measured the exposure to mercury vapor while removing mercury fillings in the didactic dental lab. And she measured it levels with water and suction, suction only, and cutting high and dry. So when water and suction were used, they were able to keep the threshold below the 25 micrograms per meter cubed for an 8-hour period set by the Alberta Occupational Health. So just an occupational level. That doesn't mean they weren't exposed. They just had it as low as they could get it. Then with suction only or cutting dry, they exceeded those thresholds by 8% and 36%. So Dr. Warwick concluded that it is paramount that dental schools consider how dental students are trained in the subject of mercury hygiene when removing dental amalgam, as well as other procedures where mercury exposure may occur. They must also train dental students in the effective use of personal protective equipment in order to prevent occupational exposure to mercury while in dental school and in clinical practice. Now, David still works with the dental school up there in Canada. I don't know how far he's gotten lately with them, if they're starting to teach or allow their students even to protect themselves. So again, the World Health Association has stated that mercury may have no threshold below which some adverse effects do not occur. So how do they figure these safe levels that aren't safe? Well, they're all over the place. The Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, which is part of the CDC, and the EPA combine to try to develop health guideline values, and this is like reading a military journal, you know. They got initials for everything, for inhaled mercury vapors. And they base it on a 1983 study of workplace exposures. And these workers were exposed to mercury vapor, and they came from 3 different types of workplaces: fluorescent tube manufacture, chlor-alkali plants, bleach, and acetaldehyde production, where they all use mercury. Now, in those type of workplaces, they have these vats of mercury. And they are constantly measuring what their levels of vapor are in that room. Now, these workers aren't walking in there in their street clothes and they're breathing the room air. They are in there in protective garments, and they have respirator masks on. And if the levels get up to 50% of what OSHA says they can have, they will shut that production line down until they can clear that vapor and get those levels back down. But dentists, we're just in there working, not paying a bit of attention, and running our levels up to many, many times more than these allowable levels when they are protected, and we're not even protected. So their lowest observed adverse effect level was 26 micrograms over a 15-year period, and they noted that these workers had a slight tremor in their hands. So then they took that and they came up with a minimal risk level of 0.2 micrograms per meter cubed of air. There's no way we can obtain that in a dental office. Can't do it. You crank out one amalgam, you're going to have higher numbers than 0.2. And this is the lowest level that's out there, okay? We got other levels all across the board. 100 micrograms from OSHA, the NIOSH of 50 micrograms, a ceiling never to exceed. Most of them say never exceed 100 micrograms. You exceed 100 micrograms, clear the office. Get out of there. You're supposed to clear it out. That last one over there was 25 micrograms. And then Canadian limits are 0.025 micrograms per meter cube for 8 hours, never to exceed 0.15 micrograms, a little lower. Now, what kind of things do we do to exceed that maximum? Well, if you, 6 mercury fillings, off-gassing on their own is 2 times more than that, not even touching them. Opening mixed amalgam capsules 20 times. When you're drilling the mercury out, it could be 80 to 100 times over that. It can be unbelievable. And for the EPA, it's 0.3. So the 6 mercury fillings are actually 400 times more. Opening a capsule 3,000 times more. And drilling them out 13,000 times more than the EPA. And the EPA is looking at environmental sources. So OSHA says not to exceed 100. And all these things that we do, if you're placing amalgam, cleaning that chairside trap out where the film showed them dumping it in a trash can, as much as 600 micrograms of vapor. Drilling with no water spray, which occasionally gets done, 1,200. Drilling with the water goes up to 100 and 460 in most studies. Robbins with water and suction was lower. She kept hers under 25. This study was 15 to 40 micrograms with water and suction. And then polishing. Hygienists, when you're polishing a mercury filling, you can release up to 900 micrograms of vapor. So in my practice, my hygienists are instructed not to polish, and in patients that have mercury, when they are polishing, I require them to wear a respirator mask. Sometimes the patients will go, "Why are you wearing that?" And I'll tell them. Sometimes the patients just keep them. Sometimes the patients say, maybe I ought to get those out. But I do have patients who keep their mercury fillings in my practice. Not too many. So another couple of articles of interest for research is Tom Duplinsky, who Tom will be here this weekend. He's a member of the IAOMT. He's at Yale. He's a dentist at Yale. They don't have a dental school, but they have a dental department in their hospital, and he works in their hospital. The health status of dentists exposed to mercury from silver amalgam tooth restorations, published in the International Journal of Statistics and Medical Research. So what Tom did, he looked at the pharmaceuticals that dentists were taking. He got it from the insurance company, and he found that dentists take more drugs for cardiac disease, for depression, for other types of neurological problems like Parkinson's, and maybe MS was in there, than the general population. And it was significantly higher. And so he says it would seem prudent to advise that dentists consider using restorations that do not contain mercury, to do procedures that don't expose you to mercury. Additional mercury research, a little bit newer stuff. A 2010 study found that all found higher levels of mercury in dental workers, in everywhere they looked. In 2011 study from NIGAB, Dentists had increased skin hyperpigmentation, respiratory disorders, irregular pulse, hand tremors, spasm of the upper extremities, neuropsychological symptoms, tachycardia, painful chewing, thyroid enlargement, fears and difficulty in writing than the general population. And Mutter did a study in 2011. Neurological issues such as memory loss, concentration issues, fatigue, and sleep disturbances were higher in dentists. The 2006 study showed an increased risk of miscarriage. 2004 study, renal and memory issues higher in dentists. Langworth increased CNS symptoms. And in 1984, assistants have lower fertility than the normal population. Tons of studies. Like Bill said, we don't need any more studies. We have over 800 of them on our website that you can go look at. So what's OSHA say about this? Because they kind of leave us alone. But actually they do say that employees have the right to know about workplace chemicals. Employers must have labels and safety data sheets. We kind of know that. Employers must train employees to handle chemicals. And the training for employees must also include hazards of the chemicals and protective measures. Do we see a lot of that happening in dentistry? Not enough. We have started a conversation with OSHA to negotiate with them new training materials and other updated information for the dental workplace, mercury hazards and mercury exposures. The problem with OSHA, they don't really know this exists. They did not have a clue that dentists were still using mercury. They thought we'd all quit. How many patients have you had go? Haven't the dentists quit putting that in? So it was off their radar. But we have started some significant conversations in the last 6 months with OSHA where we're going to work with them and teach them our protocols and see if we can't get a little pressure from OSHA to get this widespread through dentistry. So why am I standing up here talking to you when I could be playing golf? Because I'm not getting paid. I forgot to say that, but I'm not getting paid. Well, my history with mercury hasn't been a good one. Like I said, I practiced for 14 years before I actually came down with mercury poisoning. But when my wife and we got out of school, she was my chairside assistant for 6 months, and she happened to be pregnant during that time, and we lost a baby. She had a miscarriage. Right over my head, I had no clue. It could have been mercury exposure. She worked in my office for 6 months, chairside. She got diagnosed with mercury poisoning before I did. She started having fibromyalgia symptoms. I had no clue what fibromyalgia was, but I knew it was just a catch-all for a list of symptoms. They didn't know what caused it. I was working with a MD for some TMJ therapy, and he would inject some TMJ patients. So I said, and he was a pain specialist also. So I sent him over to Dr. Schwartz, and he diagnosed her with mercury toxicity. She came home with mercury, arsenic, cadmium, lead, all high levels. Now, she didn't get I didn't give her arsenic, I promise. It's in car exhaust. She I think, had a car leak in one of her cars she was driving. But she got the mercury in my dental office. She didn't have any mercury fillings. Or I took them out in dental school and exposed her. Right after school, because I didn't know that I was exposing her. So I contributed some. But she had very few mercury fillings. She had, I think, 2. She had very good teeth. Well, there's a dummy up here. I just kept on doing what I'd been doing. I had no clue. I did it for a couple more years, a lot more years, before I finally got sick enough to say, hey, what's going on? And even after my first chelation, I still hadn't found this group. And thanks to Bill Virtue, I found this group. I got treated properly because I had to go through treatment twice. And I started using strict protective measures, which have kept my levels low since then. And that's why I tell you that the IAOMT has saved my life. Because this is what the ADA recommendations are, 1976. They actually printed these in a journal in June of, 75 or something like that. And this is what we're taught to do. You know, use capsules. Don't throw them away. Recycle those capsules, keep them in closed containers. No touch technique. If you spill any, you're supposed to clean it up right away. Contain it if you spill it. You know, if you get this stuff as scrap, store it underwater, working well ventilated places. No carpeting in your operatories because that particulate will build up in your carpet and just keep off-gassing. Avoid heating the mercury. Use water spray and suction when grinding dental amalgam. Use conventional compacting procedures. Perform yearly mercury determinations on all personnel regularly employed in dental offices. Do you think any dental employee has been tested voluntarily for their mercury content? No. Go in and check the mercury vapor levels in your operatories. Did anybody do that? No. Because it's an expensive piece of equipment you got to have to do that with. And you're supposed to train them about the hazards of mercury vapor. They said this in 1976. They haven't backed it up or done anything about it. And that's how I practiced, and that's how I got sick. Have these kits in your office to clean up the mercury spills.
Well, I start to feel like Superman, then I pick a fight. Find that my opponent holding kryptonite. Didn't think I'd learned my lesson, but I'm still paying dues. Each time I drink and start to think I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Like Superman. And what it cost me, if you remember the Paranandi study that shows mercury damages your blood vessels in your heart. Well, at 48 years old, I had to have my first stent put in. And then a couple years ago, I had to have a second one put in. And my lifestyle was healthy. You know, I was exercising. I walk when I play golf. I was getting exercise. I have a fairly strict diet because of that first stent. Then I was diagnosed with diabetes. Still, I had a second one. And I'll probably have another one, my cardiologist tells me. So I tell my cardiologist, well, you know, I think it was from my mercury poisoning. He said, I don't care what it was from. You've got a sick heart. They don't care. Don't want that to happen to y'all. That's why I'm up here. So, what have we done? As an academy, we are initiating our SMART program. SMART is an acronym for Safe Mercury Amalgam Removal Technique. And it's got a two-pronged program. We're going to show you our SMART technique, and we got it set up a website. And for dentists, you can become SMART certified very easily and very quickly after you join this academy. We have different levels of kind of accreditation type programs. You can do SMART first, then you can become an accredited member, which is a little more involved, having a little more education involved in there, and then you can become a fellow, and you can become a master. Those are our different levels. So I'm going to show you several videos on SMART and what is involved. Then I'm going to break it down, keep it real simple for you about what you need to do to protect yourselves. And if you don't become SMART certified, that's fine. But I really desire everyone here that's not using some protection to start using of as much as you can. And the other prong of this program is we develop a website for patients, to drive patients to the website. And by increasing their knowledge, we hope it will increase the number of dentists who want to start using SMART techniques. And that's our goal as an organization right now. So here's our first video.
I'm really upset with what I've learned, and here's why.
These silver amalgam fillings in our mouths are made out of poisonous mercury, which is highly toxic.
So toxic that the United States signed on to a United Nations global treaty with over 100 other countries to protect human health and the environment from the adverse effects of mercury.
That mercury in our mouths? That mercury in our silver fillings?
Well, it's been proven that those amalgam fillings release mercury into our mouths 24 hours per day.
And getting them taken out can also cause even more dangerous levels of mercury exposure. So that's why it's important to have them removed safely. Make the smart choice to protect your health by watching the following videos and educating yourself about the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, or SMART, from the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology at www.thesmartchoice.com.
So that's the website we're trying to drive patients to. And that's some of our PR work or our advertising, whatever you want to call it, that we're driving to the internet.
I'm Dr. Griffin Cole of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. This is a demonstration about the unsafe levels of mercury that are released when a dentist drills out a mercury amalgam filling from your tooth, and how the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, or SMART, can protect you. In this segment, a dental mannequin was used for safety purposes because without all of the essential components of SMART, the levels of mercury exceed government safety limits. In this segment, on a real human patient, all components of SMART are in place, and levels of mercury are kept below government safety limits. As you saw, using SMART protects the patient, the dentist, the dental staff, and anyone else in the room from unsafe levels of mercury. Make the smart choice about protecting your health by having your dental mercury fillings safely removed. Find out more about the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, including how to find a dentist certified in SMART, at thesmartchoice.com.
So there's another piece we're taking out for the public to view. Pretty good pieces. So I'm going to go into detail on the SMART technique, what's required, how we use it, the rationale for using it. I'm going to summarize it up at the end with another video that's for dentists, that's on our training site for dentists. That will go over exactly what I said, but showing you in real life. So who needs that protection? Basically everybody in the office that's close to that operatory. The patient, the team members, and the dentist. Now, as you know, these are universal precautions. Wearing a mask doesn't protect us. That's protection from AIDS and viruses and bacteria, big particles, compared to what a mercury particulate is. In fact, wearing one of these type of masks with no type of mercury filter in it would increase your exposure, because there's a particulate gets on that mask. Some of it goes through that mask. It just brings the vapor closer to your face. So for patients, what we like to do is start with a pre-rinse. It can be a slurry of charcoal, chlorella, or it can be some N-acetylcysteine with vitamin C, and you can have them swallow that. Quicksilver Scientific also has a protocol that will help capture anything called intestinal metal detox, which they can take beforehand, and it will help capture anything that gets through our barriers that they may swallow in their saliva. It will bind up that mercury and take it out in the feces and not let it be absorbed. I'm not going to go into a lot of that, but that's a good source to look at. It's Quicksilver Scientific. So we're going to have full body barrier protection, including the head and face covered. We're going to have a nasal air supply for the patient. They're not going to be breathing the room air as we take that out. It can be like your nitrous unit with just oxygen on, or it can be your compressor, and I'll show you how to do that. I use the IMD and the N-acetylcysteine and vitamin C, and I'll show that in a minute. No, you take it for the protocol. There's a protocol for using IMD. I do the N-acetylcysteine and vitamin C. Either one's fine. We use a vinyl dam and nitrile gloves, and you want to coat that dam material with HGX hand cream to trap the particulate and reduce vapor penetration. It's basically a cream that has sulfur in it, and we're going to show you, I'm going to show you what those products are. And we're going to place the saliva ejector under that vinyl dam. And we're going to use eye protection for the patient. Come on. And for some reason, this slide locks up. All right, we're going to have a cleanup suction device, special suction unit can be used. We'll have auxiliary suctions with mercury air filtration, and these are big, large suction units with a big tube on it that create and move a lot of air. Of course, we're going to use copious amounts of water to reduce the heat, and with a conventional high-speed suction, and in either that or the cleanup suction. And we're going to use section it, try to take it out to bigger pieces and fast as you can, get it out of there. And then we'll do a post-rinse. After we take that rubber dam off and remove all the garments and get all the contaminated material out of the operatory, you can do a post-rinse. And again, it can be a slurry of charcoal and chlorella or N-acetylcysteine with vitamin C, but don't let them swallow this one, because it's going to have mercury particulate, and I promise you. So you don't want to swallow this rinse. You want to suction it out for them. So here's some pictures of some patient barrier protection. You know, you want to see the tooth and none of the patient. And it can be done in several different ways. As we go through here, you're going to see different materials using as drapes and whatever. And I can tell you there's no perfect material. All the materials we have tested, some of them are made to breathe so they can allow vapor to get through. But they're pretty much probably going to stop particulate from going through and getting on their clothes. So we really don't care what you use. This is Tyvek material. This is what I use. I use this Tyvek hood. And we buy a big old roll of this material from Material Concepts. And it's basically the stuff they wrap houses with. But it breathes. It does allow vapor to go through, more than some of the other materials. A vinyl dam allows less vapor to go through than a rubber dam or latex dam. So we want to use vinyl, but it's not zero, okay? So we'll rub some HGX on it, and we'll help cut down what permeates through, which is why we put the saliva ejector underneath the dam. You can see it right under the word vinyl. That's the saliva ejector poking down through there. And then this is the cleanup suction. And cleanup suction is not perfect. It has a little chamber where you cut the tooth out, and in our studies it definitely reduces the particulate that gets in the room as you work in it. But only the end of it currently is disposable. And so that tube gets contaminated. And we try to clean it out with Mercon and whatever, but I know it's holding mercury. So we're in a process, hopefully, of redesigning this and getting a completely disposable suction device. We've got a nasal air source on the patient. And here's a picture of the HGX cream to decrease the permeability of the dam to the mercury vapor. And it helps trap particulate. I mean, you can see the particulate just sticking to this stuff. And it's got sulfur in it, so it helps bind up that mercury. So then we have engineering controls for the safe removal of mercury silver fillings. Now, engineering controls basically are things you got to buy. You know, they're equipment that's designed to help us reduce the levels of mercury particulate and mercury vapor. And they are very important. Now, some common sense is make sure your office is suction units, the big motors back in your equipment room. Make sure that thing's vented to the outside. We have heard stories of offices where the suction unit just vents right back into the equipment room. So all that vapor it's sucking through is putting right back into your ventilation system and is being circulated by your air conditioning system. So make sure that vent does go to the outside. And then we have different auxiliary suctions. We have the IQ Air, and this is a picture of our IQ Air. It's got a lot of whistles and bells, and we know that each of these suction units were showing that the effluent side, no mercury comes out of it. Goes in, doesn't come out. Mercury vapor. And then the Dent Air Vac is another one, a little less expensive, a little less investment, but it does a good job. And usually these people are here. If the Dent Air Vac's not here, they'll have a silent auction for one out there. And they're about $1,000, and the IQ Airs are about twice as much. And it is just a slide from the IQ Air. And like I said, we know that these, by using a Jerome mercury vapor analyzer, that what goes in high comes out at zero. And it definitely has a charcoal filter in there, activated charcoal that captures all the mercury vapor. Again, nitrile gloves, because the nitrile material allows less vapor through than the latex material. And this is HGX hand cream. It can be used to clean your hands. It can be put on your hands before you put the glove on. And that's the most effective way to do it. And then we also use it to do the rubber dam. And we get that from actontech.com. There's a company called Mercon that makes a lot of materials that help us clean up the mercury. And this is to use on your surfaces after you've done. You know, wipe your hand pieces down. Wipe all your surfaces that may have been in contact. Not to be used on patients or their skin or whatever. You don't wash your hands with this stuff. There's a spray and wipes that I use. The instruments that are contaminated during procedure, we get them out of the operatory. I take them to the sterilization area. I spray Mercon all over them and put them in and let them soak. And it binds up the mercury and does a good job. And then the wipes, they look like baby wipes. You just pull them out and the girls wipe down all the surfaces in the operatories. I think in Canada you get that from Ross Healthcare. In the States we can get those from Granger. And they have all kinds of different things. But in the States, Granger, and in Canada, I think it was Ross Healthcare. And that's what they cost. You're going to be spending money, and so what we do is we do charge a fee for mercury protection when we take these out. I think we're charging about $200 now. You probably got $35 to $40 maybe worth of disposables in there, plus you got the extra time it takes to set them up, get it out of the operatory, wipe everything down, and let them drink the slurry. So it adds a little bit of time to your procedures. We're going to do questions at the end, if that's okay. Write them down so you remember them. And then Maddie, I think, charges about $300, $350. This is a cleanup. Like I said, we're trying to redo this one. E.L. Faust Company also makes a whole room air that runs all the time. It's a lot quieter. Whole room sterilizer. It has a mercury filter in it also. We leave it running all the time. He's also come out with one to use chairside. He got mad at me because I don't have any pictures of it, but I just don't know anything about it yet. But he's always here, so he's another contact out there at the exhibitors. So to protect your team, you're going to need to have a respirator mask. And there's all kinds of those. There's a 3M full face mask. I think it's more comfortable. I use that one, but you can't use loops with it. So that can be a problem. You can use a Comfo Classic mask. You can use loops and maybe a shield to finish it off. This is an older picture, but Jack's the only one I know. This is Jack Call. He has a positive pressure mask. He's got this set up so his compressor provides air for he and the patient and the team members. He's got three coming off the same line. But we have to get on to him and get him put a face shield on. So here's Dr. Warwick, and he's got a face shield and a cloth mask, but he's got a smaller mercury vapor mask underneath it, like you can see on his assistant. He's got one on too underneath. He uses surgical drapes, which are fine. And then this is me, and I know it looks scary as heck, but this is how we chose to do it. And the reason we did this is because when we did this study where we were creating all this particulate and measuring it, Matty said, I found these suits for us to wear. And he came out, I said, I'm not wearing that all day long. That's going to be miserable. And I was miserable all day long because we cut them out for 8 hours. And Bill was miserable because everybody in the room had to have one on when we did this. And it was a long, hot, hard day. But you don't have them on long, and I'm sorry if it messes up your hair. You're going to need to mess up your hair. You need to protect your hair, girls. So just showing you different ways. It doesn't have to be that scary looking. And this is Dr. Young. He uses the same equipment I do, or he found it. And then just expose the instruments you're going to use to take it out. So just a mirror and a handpiece and the rubber dam stuff is usually all I've got out when I'm taking out the mercury. Everything else is covered up, and then I can get rid of those covers. Hey, Bill, we're going long. Okay? We're going to do questions right after this. Okay. All right, and then this is the N-acetylcysteine and the vitamin C, and I just buy that, at the health food store. It's a precursor to glutathione. It's got a lot of sulfur in it. It grabs it up. And then vitamin C is a good chelator. And we mix this up at the first of the day, so that's about a quart of ozonated water. And we put all this in there and keep it fresh every day, and we use that during the day to rinse our patients out. All right, and you can use the charcoal also. All right, so if I summarize everything for us, okay?
I'm Dr. Griffin Cole of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. Patients and dentists should make sure that each step of the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, or SMART, will be applied during a dental appointment for filling removal. The first step is for patients to consult with their dentist before the mercury filling removal begins, so that both the patient and dentist agree that all safety measures will be in place. This helps to ensure that the patient and dentist know exactly what to expect. It's also helpful to watch the following example of the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, or SMART, being applied. Each room where mercury fillings are removed should have adequate filtration in place, which requires a high-volume air filtration system. I'm Dr. Griffin Cole of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. Patients and dentists should make sure that each step of the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, or SMART, will be applied during a dental appointment for filling removal. The first step is for patients to consult with their dentist before the mercury filling removal begins, so that both the patient and dentist agree that all safety measures will be in place. This helps to ensure that the patient and dentist know exactly what to expect. It's also helpful to watch the following example of the safe mercury amalgam removal technique, or SMART, being applied. Each room where mercury fillings are removed should have adequate filtration in place, which requires a high-volume air filtration system such as IQ Air Dental Mercury FlexVac or similar device, capable of removing mercury vapor and amalgam particles generated during the removal of one or more mercury fillings. If possible, windows should be open to reduce the mercury concentration in the air. The patient should be given a slurry of charcoal, chlorella, or similar absorbent to rinse and swallow before the procedure, unless the patient declines or there are other contraindications making this clinically inappropriate. Protective gowns and covers for the dentist, dental personnel, and the patient should be in place. All present in the room should be protected because substantial quantities of particles generated during the procedure will elude collection by suction devices. It has been demonstrated that these particles can be spread from the patient's mouth to the patient's knee and to the chest, shoulder, and neck of the dentist and dental assistant. Either a properly sealed respiratory grade mask rated to capture mercury or a positive pressure properly sealed mask providing air or oxygen should be worn by the dentist and all dental personnel in the room. Non-latex nitrile gloves should be utilized by the dentist and all dental personnel in the room. Face shields and hair head coverings are to be utilized by the dentist and all dental personnel in the room. In order to protect the patient's skin and clothing, a full-body impermeable barrier should be utilized. External air or oxygen delivered via a nasal mask for the patient also should be utilized to assure the patient does not inhale any mercury vapor or amalgam particulate during the procedure. A nasal cannula is an acceptable alternative for this purpose as long as the patient's nose is completely covered with an impermeable barrier. A saliva ejector should be placed under the dental dam to reduce mercury exposure to the patient. A dental dam that is made with non-latex nitrile material should be placed and properly sealed in the patient's mouth, as well as a full head, face, and neck barrier that is under and around the dam. During amalgam filling removal, the dentist should utilize an IQ Air Dental Mercury Flex Vac or similar device in close proximity to the operating field, that is 2 to 4 inches from the patient's mouth, to mitigate mercury exposure. High-speed evacuation produces better capture when fitted with a cleanup device, which is preferred. Copious amounts of water to reduce heat and a conventional high-speed evacuation device to capture mercury discharges should be used to reduce ambient mercury levels. The amalgam should be sectioned into chunks and removed in as large of pieces as possible using a small diameter carbide drill. Once the removal process is complete, the patient's mouth should be thoroughly flushed with water and then rinsed out with a slurry of charcoal, chlorella, or similar absorbent. During the opening and maintenance of suction traps in operatories or on the main suction unit, dental staff should utilize the appropriate personal protection equipment described earlier. An amalgam separator should be properly installed, utilized, and maintained to collect mercury amalgam waste so that it is not released into the effluent from the dental office. Dentists must comply with federal, state, and local regulations addressing the proper handling, cleaning, and/or disposal of mercury-contaminated components, clothing, equipment, surfaces of the room, and flooring in the dental office. I hope that you'll make the smart choice about your dental care by asking for safety measures during your mercury filling removal. For more information about the Safe Mercury Amalgam Removal Technique, or SMART, including scientific research about why these safety measures are important, visit thesmartchoice.com from the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology.
So the contaminated barriers that we have, we use a company called Stericycle. I don't know if that was the one in the film. And it's like a 5-gallon bucket. And I put all my contaminated rubber dams, those little traps that come out chair side, gloves, all that goes in this bucket. If we have a really big piece of mercury that doesn't get sucked up and is laying around, we throw that in the bucket too and send it to the separator. Teeth that have amalgam in it, they go in a bucket that we extract. Now, you're going to create a lot of waste with all the other patient barrier stuff that you have, and we can fill up a 55, 2 or 3 of these a week in my office with all our protective garments. And right now, they're going in the trash, which is not really a great thing to do, but we don't have a really good economical solution for getting rid of this stuff. And we're trying to work with some people to figure that out, how we can get this picked up and recycled. So some of you may have bought an office, or maybe you're working with an older dentist that won't let you do any of this stuff, which I'll tell you to quit. And you can rent a mercury vapor analyzer to test your environment from the IAOMT. So if you got an office that's full of carpet, I promise you, if you bring this in there, and somebody's been practicing dentistry for years, or a couple of weeks maybe even, you're going to have contamination in the carpets, and you'll pick it up. If you vacuum that, you'll see the vapor go up. It's amazing. But we do have because these analyzers cost, this one was originally probably about a $50,000 machine. We just purchased it for 10, and we're letting you use it for, I think we're renting it out for a month at a time for $500. If you only want it for 2 weeks, we'll give it to you for $250. You know, so we have it available. You just got to give it back, or you're going to owe us $10,000. So if you find some contamination, what you need to do, you can use some flowers of sulfur, make you a mop bucket of sulfur, and you can start cleaning it up. You can use those Mercon decontamination products to do surfaces and autoclaves. You may have to replace an autoclave. You definitely got to get rid of any unused amalgam that's in the office. And if you've got soft carpeting, you got to pull it up and get rid of it. I would advise absolutely zero fabrics, curtains in your treatment rooms. Don't have any kind of fabrics in there. Have surfaces, hard surface floors you can mop and clean up. So get rid of the drapes. So we hope, how many people are not members of the IAOMT? Everybody's a member? A couple people? We'd love for you to join us this weekend. Now, what we hope our members are doing, and I know all of you aren't doing it, and you may take some time to purchase your equipment, and you have to get into this, but we really want you to start taking these principles of mercury safety and get them into your office as fast as you can, and fully implement them. I mean, by that, I mean, if you're taking out a buccal pit, we put all that stuff on. But usually we're not only taking out a buccal pit, usually we're taking out quadrants or full mouths of amalgams and getting them all gone as fast as we can. You're going to hear about fluoride, some data you've probably never heard about fluoride this afternoon. And we advocate becoming also a fluoride-free practice, and including eliminating fluoride-containing composites. And after you hear David, you'll understand why I'm saying that. So you want to install this equipment and use these protocols to protect you, your family, your patients, your team members. Now there is a newer composite out that is the first all-ceramic-based direct restoration. It's called Admira Fusion, made by Voco, and it's a fluoride and BPA-free composite, a truly free BPA-free composite. The Voco people are here this week. I'm not sure if the flowable is out yet, because they keep telling me I can't get it. But so I've been using this, replacing all my other composites, which were Voco composites. So I wanted you to know about this composite. Now, becoming fluoride-free, you might see a little revenue go down in your hygiene department, but you'll see go up on your other sides. And it will also attract a new group of patients that don't really want fluoride. All right, so we're going to open it up for questions or take a break first. What are we going to do? Probably better go ahead, right?
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. Thank you. Very good. Dr. Virtue. So, how many people are here for the very first time? Wow. Awesome. A special welcome. Really, thank you for coming. And as you saw in that video, that there are very different ways to do this. Don't get overwhelmed by it. I mean, there's a lot of equipment to get, but this is something that you can do quite easily. It doesn't have to be as expensive as what he spends. You saw me. I don't wear the big, huge mask, and I'm still well protected. And
you haven't had 2 heart attacks yet.
I haven't. but one thing that you don't know,
which is why I wear it.
One thing that he doesn't know is that I had the lowest levels that the guy who makes the machine has ever seen with my technique. It was the lowest. He goes, I've never seen it this low. So I'm just saying, you can protect the patient for sure and yourselves. You don't have to go the whole 9 yards, but you do need to look at the SMART program. We have to be thorough in that. Okay, this is y'all's time for question and answer. So I've got the microphone. No, I'll do it. I want to take it around so I can see who's talking, speak in the microphone.
Hey, Dave.
And we'll get you on tape.
Dave, get you a mic too.
2 mics.
Huh?
Right.
You got one? So you're going to answer questions?
I just want to clarify, you do all those drapes and then you take them off, rolling them in. Looks like you rolled them so that the inside was in, I don't know how to say it, but
right.
And then you put it in the trash?
Unfortunately, that's what I do.
So there's nothing, right? I mean, I know if there was an option, you would do it. So there isn't any. So I can just figure.
Well, I actually know there is an option. I could charge the patients more and buy more of those buckets.
Okay.
So there's an option.
My other question is, do you know what happens to the mercury after you send the amalgam boss separator?
I do know that.
Would you mind sharing that?
Well, I know that what you send in the separator is safely done something with. I know it's not going back into the environment. Now, we can ask Mike that. Sometimes he's, Mike hanging around? He's not back there, is he?
But you get a certificate.
Yeah, you get a certificate back that it has been recycled. So I know that's being done properly. I don't know how they do it. I don't know about the Stericycle bucket. I don't know what they think when they get that bucket. I'm not sure what they do with that, how they get rid of it. Because it's solid waste, you know. It's not, I don't know what they do. But you do get certificates back that you're doing it properly, so you have records in your office. And we're going to be required very shortly to have separators. And we're going to be required to keep records. I don't know if we're having to send them in or what it's going to be coming down to, but Mike Darcy at his booth, at the boss booth, he'll be able to answer those questions. And the EPA has said they're going to require us. It's supposed to be this year. Of course, it's always supposed to be this year. Hey, are y'all filming this still? Because we cannot see the hands.
I just want to add to that about the contaminated sundries. At some point in time, that is going to have to be disposed of, just like the separator material. There are countries now that are starting to work on that. That's a great opportunity for you to go to your whoever's responsible for waste management and ask them what you do with this contaminated mercury sundry. That gives them the ability to know that that's happening, and then they'll have to work on it, right? In
South Carolina, we can't throw a computer in the trash or TV. But I was at a recycling place, and I had a fluorescent light bulb, and I asked the guy there, I said, well, what do I do with this light bulb? I don't see where you have anywhere to recycle. He said, I'll just throw it in the trash. That make a bit of sense. But we can still dump our mercury out from our offices straight into the effluent, straight to the sewer plant.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
My question is, we're from Alex Bell Dental, Dayton, Ohio. We're members of the IAOMT. Do we need to do something different to be certified for the SMART program?
Yeah, you're not accredited? Are you working toward accreditation?
I think Dr. Cobb has done that.
So it's already accredited?
Yes.
So it's very easy to add the SMART certification.
Okay.
You just go to the SMART website, go to our website, go to the SMART area, and you can become SMART accredited too.
Okay.
And then you can use the logo on your site. And we've only really released this to the public for a few months, but we're already getting patients coming in saying they know about it. So it's going to spread pretty good. Okay?
I have maybe a suggestion I think that would help because I'm new. I see that you have things kind of all over about, where to get things, but I think especially for the SMART, if there was like a list of the things that we should do, where to buy them, what exactly it is, because that'll make it so much easier.
I'm pretty sure it's on there.
It is. Okay, it's on there? Okay, it's on the SMART. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have another question. I've had patients already come to me and they want to know, besides, using the chelation and everything, what other toxicology type of things or who should they see to treat some of the toxicity? Because I'm getting referrals from the Cleveland Clinic and people are coming and they're testing, the Cleveland Clinic is testing them for mercury.
Yep.
And they're saying that they want them to see a dentist who's certified in removing amalgams properly, but they're also inquiring about how else to be treated.
Well,
you know,
the Cleveland Clinic is one of our more open groups. I mean, they are very aware of mercury.
Right.
And that's why they're sending, and they're very aware of our SMART program.
Right.
But the Cleveland Clinic MD should be the one doing the chelation. As a dentist, we would be doing a medical procedure, so you don't want to cross that line because that can get you in trouble.
Right.
Now, the IMD products, intestinal metal detox, do help patients start freeing up their mercury. But we're using it as an initial protection for a procedure. As they take more of it, it is going to help some. In certain patients, it may be all they need.
Okay.
So that's Chris Shade, Quicksilver Scientific. I'd go look at his site. I don't think he's here this week, but he may have a booth. Lots of information on his site and how to use it in the protocols.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
That also varies state by state, too, your ability to do that. That's your state board requirement.
Yeah. So you should develop that relationship with the Cleveland Clinic doctors specifically. And I would do that by when they send you somebody, I would write back and tell them how many surfaces you removed, if they still have metal in their mouth. And remember, if they have crowns, there's probably mercury under them. You know, and if you tell them, we're not doing these crowns right now, but there possibly is mercury under the crowns, then they may say, if they start chelation and they're not seeing the results they want, they may tell you to go ahead and get those crowns out. Okay? Now, for a patient who's sick, it's better I tell them just get all the metal out. Give them a metal-free mouth.
I have a question about the buckets. You said you fill them up and you keep them in the office, so they're not used bucket per patient, right?
No.
Okay, so
I have a smaller container in the operatory that I'll put the rubber dams and stuff and all that in that's sealed. And then we'll take that bucket to the larger bucket, which is in the back, you know, not out as much. Do it as quick as we can. And really, when the lids are off those buckets, when we're transferring, we have the large auxiliary suction running also. They'll have gloves on, they'll have their mask on. They won't be fully garbed unless they just haven't taken it off when they're doing it from the last patient of the day. And but we'll have the auxiliary suction running also.
And then these buckets are disposed through
they go back to the mine Stericycle, so we ship them back to them. They we get an empty bucket, ship the full one back to them.
Okay. And the other question I have about the gold crowns. So what is your thought on the patient have gold crown? Would it be your concern at this point?
That varies. That's going to vary by patient. And if it's a full crown, there's probably mercury under it. If it's an on-layer inlay, you know, it's probably maybe doesn't have mercury under it. Now, I do have a alternative care practitioner in town that has an EAV machine. He can test those crowns. He basically measures the voltage on it. He's pretty good about telling us that there's mercury under it or not mercury under it. Or they all have mercury under them. Most of them have mercury under them anyway, so it makes him right most of the time. I'm not sure which one it is, but he tells us if he suspects mercury. So if you can find somebody like that to help make those decisions. Now, for a very sick patient, like I said, I don't care what kind of metal it is. It needs to come out. What's the percentage of people that are allergic to gold? Is it 15? Where's David? Does he know? The percentage of people that have allergies to gold? We've heard that in the lady that does the ELISA testing.
I just wanted to comment.
10 I'm not sure. I think it's 10 or 15%.
Here's a little comment on gold. That mercury strongly clings to gold surfaces. So if that patient's had some gold crowns or whatever in the mouth at the same time as those amalgam fillings, you can figure that the gold is contaminated by mercury, and in order to become mercury-free, get rid of those gold crowns. Also, a lot of time, usually the gold has some very toxic things in there with the gold, like copper, silver, and palladium. Now, if you look up the toxicity of palladium, extremely toxic, and this is the kind of cheap junk that is in the usual gold crown. And so we've, at DAMS, have done a lot of educating on cheap junk in these gold crowns. And it produces things like EMF sensitivity, according to some literature that I've seen. So, you know, and I think mercury clings to other metal surfaces too. So gold particularly, but you got a lot of metal in crowns, bridges, and so on. And so you could figure there's mercury contamination there. So there's a lot of things to unwind in that patient's mouth. So we have to look at the bigger picture of total dental revision, take care of issues. Also, the root canal issues, but okay.
Go ahead, thank you. Thank you, Leah.
Just to elaborate on the issue with gold crowns, I mean, we've had patients tinnitus disappear when we take off the crown. Second of all, Dr. Kennedy and I have talked about this multiple times. I mean, I really feel that when you have that galvanic effect and you have mercury in contact with gold, it's equivalent to like having 12 or 13 mercury fillings. It off-gases a lot more mercury. So I am totally towards taking those gold crowns out unless they know 100% that there's not mercury underneath. But even so, there are stuff in the gold crowns that are toxic, I feel, as well. I have a couple of questions, but I also need to brag on Dr. Palmer as well. So I want to know, how much do you charge per quadrant, Dr. Palmer, when it comes to mercury removal, or do you just charge a standard fee for all 4 quadrants?
I charge a standard fee per procedure. So if the patient's getting 1 mercury filling out, we still have to get all that stuff out. It's the same thing. If we're doing the whole mouth and getting every mercury one out in 1 session, we just charge the same thing, and it's about $200.
Okay. And that cream that you use, that you said that really works at eliminating the particulate, do you feel that when you take the rubber dam off, do you not see as much stuff underneath? Or is it just something that...
No, I don't. I mean, you really want to get that rubber dam sealed up.
Yeah.
I didn't show any pictures using, you know, things. You got to get
even when I feel like I got it sealed, you still take it off and you still see just a little bit. You know what I mean?
Sometimes not. But,
okay.
But you got to remember, our barriers are not perfect, which is why we're using those pre-rinses and post-rinses and rinsing them out as fast as we can. You know, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you you're getting 0 exposure. The patient's getting 0 exposure, and I tell them that. But I said it's a minimum we can do. It's the lowest we can get.
But I also want to brag on Dr. Palmer a little bit. I joined the organization a couple of years ago. I was down to 100 pounds, and I got severely sick from mercury poisoning. I thought I was going to have to stop practicing dentistry. And he and Dr. Kennedy and Dr. Tammy, they all took me in and helped me. And I went from not being able to eat gluten, dairy, or sugar, having chronic panic attacks, to being healthy and being able to partner in a holistic dental practice. I will tell you the respirator masks are important. I know people have their different opinions about what mask, but I did not get well until I wore the big one. When I used the lead ones or the ones from Lowe's or the smaller ones, I did electrodermal screening and I still had mercury vapor in every organ system. So within a week of me wearing that mask, they couldn't find mercury in any organ system except my body fat. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about getting healthy, in chelation, I have been through it. So I just on them. So they really helped me. And if anyone has any health issues, they can help you too. So.
I have an ongoing battle in my office of the dental assistants wanting to take off all the gear immediately. So I want to put something on the record so I could take it back and show them, here's the experts talking, because I know you've done this. Presuming that you are following all the protocols and your particulate doesn't get above 0.3 was the guideline in that per...
I know what you're getting to, and when we did that study, when we had different sessions, we had to get our levels back down before we could start to the other one. And generally that took about 5-6 minutes, right?
Okay, so you're sounding
Yeah,
like you're
with the high-speed vac running, okay?
suggesting
Don't turn it off, keep it running.
5 to 6 minutes minimum before you take the
So
gear off.
for the dentist, that gives me time to, I'm the one who takes the stuff and gets it to wherever you're storing it, trash can or in another bin or something.
Okay.
So that gets me out. Then I'll go check a couple of hygiene patients. And for the girls, they're supposed to stay garbed up until, you know, wipe everything down, give it a few minutes, and then let the patient rinse. It's the vapor that's in the room. Hopefully I've carried the particulate out on the barriers.
Okay, so your staff is wearing the gowns until the entire procedure is done. Sounds like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No. When we, just through the mercury removal, not till the entire procedure is done. They will keep their mask on. They'll take their garments off, but keep their mask on for a couple minutes. And then we take all that stuff off and come back in and restore the teeth.
Thank you.
No more questions?
Do you make the assistant wipe the surfaces after you remove the amalgam before you proceed with doing the...
Yes, and we use those Mercon wipes.
Wipe. Okay. Is the patient still stays on oxygen during all these procedures? Okay, thank you.
Same. How about you ask?
Okay. What about partials and dentures? Are you guys not doing any metal at all?
Partials and dentures. You're making metal partials?
Mostly all vinyl. Mostly what we make is vinyl. Depends on the situation. If the occlusion demands I can't get a good vinyl denture, I find that, you know, if you're missing a lot of posterior teeth, the vinyl dentures don't always fit very well in the posterior. So sometimes I got to break bad and use a metal partial. But I'd say 9 out of 10 is a vinyl partial.
Okay. And I have one other question about implants.
About what?
Your implants?
Okay.
So what is the thought process on that, or what are you guys going with?
Well, I am still using titanium. I know Joe's using the ceramic. So, you know, I think that probably goes both ways.
Okay.
I had no doubt that the ceramic's probably better, but that's what I'm doing.
Send them to Greenville. I'll put them in. I really think titanium's on the way out, the implants. I've been doing ceramic implants for, I think, 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
Anybody else? We've still got about 20 minutes before lunch, so this is your time.
You'd probably live it here. Probably.
Did you ever try to use an isolite instead of rubber dam, or this is not an option at all, or it should not be used?
We don't have any studies on isolite.
Yes, I have, and occasionally I get a person's very they can't tolerate the dam. What am I trying to say?
Claustrophobic.
There you go, claustrophobic, couldn't think of it. You know, you put the nose piece on, put the eye pillow over them, you put all this other garb on them, and sometimes they just can't tolerate that, so occasionally we'll use the isolite. Not as effective, I'm sure, but, you know, sometimes they just will not tolerate the dam. And there's occasions when you can't get a rubber dam on a tooth, too. I mean, you can't get the clamp back on the second molar or what have you be, and we'll just sometimes have to just go to the clean out without the dam, but it's rare, really rare.
I have a question about the restoration materials. I mean, I have been using white for about 20 years, but this new material that came out, how are the studies on it, on where? Because I have a lot of Bruxers, and also what other materials have you been using previous to that?
Well, I was using Voco products. I was just using their Grandiose and their Admira products, which we found were very low in BPAs. So they came out with this one. They have the studies, and you can pick up the literature at their booth this weekend.
Okay.
And they're beautiful, handle great.
Okay.
So
I just, the rep just came back last Tuesday, and I just ordered mine, so I haven't used it yet, the new material.
Is there a concern about the galvanic response in patients that just have a single metal in their mouth, like a single titanium implant?
Yeah, and other metals. Yeah, if they have a single implant and other metals, there's going to be a galvanic response. Are you talking about just a single implant?
No, like no other metals.
I don't know. Probably depends on what's on top of it, I guess. You know, if you got an abutment that's metal screwed into it, you got two metals.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add a few words to the question about the Admira composite. We did a study, or we hired a company in my town of Austin to look at the BPA content of composites, because, you know, people were now bringing this argument up. Well, those are high BPAs. And I gave them 6 different kinds, and the most popular ones. And when they were done testing, they laughed and asked why we even did this. I said, what do you mean? He goes, we couldn't get readings even over 1% from your worst one. I go, what do you mean? He goes, a plastic bottle has 100% estrogenic activity as a cancerous breast, a plastic bottle. He goes, your filling materials, barely 1% was the worst. So whenever someone makes a comment about the BPA level, trust me, that is so exaggerated. It is so unbelievably low. But it is great that we now have ones that are BPA free. It's just nice. And Voco's a great company.
Hi, I was wondering, I've read or I was watching something online. Is there a certain number of fillings that you should be removing per appointment, or how do you work that out in terms of the contamination for the patient?
Well, that sometimes is determined by the physician who referred them. I'll let them tell me that. We generally do quadrant at a time, just for the convenience of the patient. A lot of times these people come 2 or 3 hours away to get the work done. Sometimes they want upper, lower, 2 quadrants done at a time. I tend not to do more than 2 quadrants at a time, either left or right. But, that's sometimes determined by the distance the patient travels and the physician. And the health of the patient, too. Somebody's coming in halfway sick, you're probably going to want to limit it a bit.
You got a cancer patient, Parkinson patient, go slow. You got a patient who wants them out, wants to prevent, and they're pretty healthy, I'll do them all on the same day.
That's the beauty of our protocol, is you can do them all. So whatever you read online about don't cross midlines, don't work on immune cycles, all that was all based on old information when we didn't have the protective barriers that we have now.
Well, I took Hal Elgin's course, and his philosophy was you could not cross the midline unless the patient was sedated. It was like, okay, what's that got to do with it? With the sedation part of it. I don't think there was really any evidence or any information about that. The reason I don't like to cross the midline just because of occlusion. You got a totally numb mouth, and a lot of times when I do that, I'm going to wind up with a high filling somewhere because they're not really coming together. So that's the only reason I would be hesitant.
I do have a question in regard to what was posed about titanium implant and then other materials. If you're using the Clifford testing, biocompatibility, and if the crown material is compatible with the person and the titanium implant is also compatible, wouldn't that sort of mitigate that potential problem?
It should, but not every patient agrees to the Clifford test. Some people do it. So it's only, I think, $250, which I say only. That's significant from some folks, and they don't all do it. A Clifford test is you have the patient go to the physician, get some blood drawn, you send the serum off. I kind of mentioned it this morning a bit, And you've got about 7,000 different dental products in this book, maybe 6,500, but pretty much every dental product's listed. And then you get an N or I think N or S, no and yes, and maybe it's N and Y. My staff does this. And then, as I said earlier, it's an antigen antibody reaction test. So you know exactly if that patient can have the particular etch. You know, it's all phosphoric acid, but maybe the colorant in there or something in that one is particularly different. So we try to follow that as closely as we can. But if you follow that, I mean, there's some scientific information there that says, yes, if you do muscle testing, which I think is accurate, but there's no science behind that. Is it right? I think so. But don't use that to hang your hat on. If you want to really do it properly, Clifford test. And the other test was Blanche has got, what's her?
You mean the Huggins one? Or the
Yeah, the Huggins system, yeah. But there's 2 companies out there doing this.
Dr. Jess Clifford is here this weekend, so if you want to speak to him directly, he's a wealth of information.
So, like I said, I'm going to be new at this. I actually using the protective barriers. So I'd like to hear from each of you of how you introduce this into your practice and how you explain this to patients, how you talk about the fee, how you talk about everybody now that has an amalgam, you're going to be doing this different. So I think that would be really good to hear.
When I first started protecting myself, I was using a respirator mask, a gumbo mask, but that's kind of different for a patient to see us put that on. And so I just said, because this is, I wasn't established and have the reputation I have now. So I just told the patient, I said, look, these things are full of mercury vapor. When we take them out, everybody's going to be exposed. Would you like me to protect you too? And what do you think they said? That's all I did. They said, yes, please, thank you. That's what they'd say. And now, we really don't have to do that anymore because they're all coming there because we know we do it.
Well, it was a long time ago when I started this, and I know when I first put the mask on, I assumed everybody was going to freak out and go, oh my God, what are you doing? And I just told them I was going to protect them from my breath. So that was acceptable. There wasn't any real resistance from my staff because they trusted me and knowing I was going to do the right thing. And I did it incrementally. I didn't just come up with a meeting and come back with everything in the world, because back then we didn't have everything. We had a few things that we could work with, the dam and the clean out, and I think maybe an ionizer. Then the vacuums came along, and then a better mask came along, and then the mercury separating system. So it was incremental. But the resistance you think you're going to have is minimal. I mean, we make it up in our mind, but it really didn't happen. I haven't had anybody ever say, what are you doing? Because they come in, half of them know what it is. The other half don't care. So it's really a non-issue. In fact, I found it that way.
I mean, I still have a few patients, most of them men, they break a filling and we're replacing it. So we're putting all this stuff on them and we're explaining to him a little bit. And I had one like last week, he goes, I guess that stuff really is dangerous if you're doing all this, isn't it? And I said, yeah, you ought to get the rest of them out. So.
How do you do that? Yeah. Discussing the fee, the treatment, and then, because people always want to know exactly how much everything's going to cost. Now you're going to implement a new charge for it.
Well, I don't charge per quadrant per visit. I just raise my fees to compensate me for that, because I found insurance had a problem with paying this fee. Some patients had a problem. I didn't want to do a buckle pit and charge all that. So I just raised my fees to compensate me for that difference.
Like what % would you say?
Oh, God, it's been so long. We just jumped them, 10, 15% years ago. We've just incrementally increased them each year by 5% or so. So you got to get compensated. This is not inexpensive, and it's time consuming. And these people take more time. But the good news is they do a lot of dentistry. Mm-hmm. So you're going to sit there and work on somebody for a couple hours. So that's the benefit,
right?
Or to us, but also the benefit to the patient.
I do the same thing. I don't charge any kind of a mercury removal fee. I just raise my fees.
I don't charge a removal fee. I charge a mercury protection fee.
Whatever.
Okay. And I do it for any time we got to pull the stuff out. So if we pull it out one time to do a whole mouth, they pay one fee. That's why a lot of patients go ahead and do their whole mouth. Okay. And then for others, I don't, if I'm not pulling all that stuff out, I don't have that fee. But you can do it either way. And I don't care what insurance pays because I don't deal with insurance too much.
100%.
Oh, really?
Pretty close.
100%.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Wow.
They might come for zirconia implants.
Yeah, yeah.
But basically, they're biologically minded patients now when they come.
How do you reach those people?
I use a company called Equa. You use Equa? Well, all three of us have Equa doing our websites for us.
It's a company, Equa.
Equa.
EKWA.
Also, I've signed up with Tom McGuire's site, and they'll both be here. The DAMS organization, Leo's over there. Support all those and use all those kind of things. And, we do marketing at, I should have brought my billboard. I actually have a billboard.
Oh, really?
It says, what does it say? Got the practice name. What does it say? Holistic, happy, and something else. Healthy. Holistic, happy, healthy. And that billboard's actually bringing patients in locally. I was shocked.
Bill, hang on one second. Yeah. We actually have a mentor group here in the academy where you can hook up with someone like us, and we'll get on the phone with you. We can guide you. We can tell you all the ins and outs, what to avoid, pitfalls. So that'd probably be the most helpful thing for any of you that's wondering, well, how do I do this? What do I say?
Yeah, I would encourage you to go to Joe Irvine's or Griffin's websites and see what Equa's done. It's very helpful. And not just in just the Mercury concerned patients, but just in patients in general. We're very active. It used to be if you had a website, you were really hot. Today, you better have a hot website to be noticed. I mean, you make dinner reservations. You're going to go to a one-star restaurant? You're going to go to the 5. So we really actively work hard to keep our patients giving testimonials and just making sure that our information is always coming into the website. And they're real good about updating information every week or several weeks. I mean, they work really hard to keep up in the rankings. And like you all know, if you're not high in the rankings, you might not have a website. But very effective. And they do a lot of work for the academy too. Equa does, so I have to give them credit. They're a really good group.
Okay, so thank you to both Dr. Virtue and Dr. Palmer.
Thank you.